When my mother looks me straight in the face and says, "If you walk out that door tonight, Kylie, don't come back," I feel the whole room turn cold. My sister is standing by the china cabinet with her arms folded. My mother's friends are pretending not to listen. The lemon candles are still burning on the dining table, and the pot roast I brought over is cooling beside a bowl of green beans nobody has touched. I can hear the grandfather clock in the hallway ticking so loudly it sounds like a warning. I don't cry. Not then. I just stand there with my car keys in one hand and my purse in the other, staring at the woman who taught me how to braid my hair, how to frost a cake, how to smile when my heart was breaking. Then she says it again, slower this time, "Don't come back," and for the first time in my life I listen. My name is Kylie Jenner, and this is a story about what happened when I stopped begging for a place in a family that only loved me when I was useful. Let me take you back to where this all started. I know what people assume when they hear my name. They think glamour. Cameras, headlines. A woman who has never worried about keeping a family together. But behind all the polished photographs and the perfect lighting, I was raised in the same kind of emotional, whether a lot of women know too well. The kind where love comes wrapped in obligation. The kind where being the dependable one becomes your identity before you're even old enough to understand what that will cost you. I was the daughter who always came when my mother called. If she needed groceries, I sent them. If the refrigerator broke, I replaced it. If she said she was too tired to drive herself to an appointment, I cleared my schedule and took her. When my older sister, Lana, went through her second divorce and suddenly couldn't manage, I paid for 3 months of her rent without telling anybody. When my nephew needed braces, I covered those too. I never kept score, at least not back then. My mother lived in a large white house at the end of a long curved drive, with blue hydrangeas along the front walk and a porch swing that creaked every time the wind changed. People used to say it looked like a storybook home, and in some ways it was. Sunday dinners, birthdays with too much buttercream frosting, Christmas music starting the day after Thanksgiving. My mother had a way of making a table look beautiful. She believed cloth napkins mattered. She believed every pie should have an egg wash. She believed family should gather, no matter what. What she didn't believe in, though I didn't see it clearly then, was emotional fairness. My sister Lana was the one who could storm out, say terrible things, disappear for days, and still be welcomed back with "she's just going through a hard time." I was the one expected to stay calm, to understand, to smooth things over, to pay for the flowers after the funeral, and the extra chairs at the reunion, and the repair to the guest bathroom. No one else noticed until it was already done. If you're a certain kind of daughter, you know this role. You become the soft place everyone lands. And then one day you realize they've mistaken your softness for endless supply. Looking back, I should have noticed the little things. The way my mother would say, "You're the strong one," whenever she was about to ask me for something unreasonable. The way she'd praise my generosity in public, but dismiss my concerns in private. The way Lorna started referring to my help as if it were a family utility. Like electricity, like hot water, something that should just be there when she turned the handle. I remember one Sunday afternoon about 8 months before everything fell apart. We were in my mother's kitchen. She was slicing peaches for a cobbler. The radio was playing old love songs, and I was sitting at the counter answering emails. Lorna had just left after borrowing my mother's car for the weekend because hers was making a noise. My mother didn't lower her voice when she said it. "You know," she told me, dusting cinnamon over the peaches, "your sister's been under terrible stress. If you could help her with a little something this month, it would mean a lot." I looked up. I already paid her electric bill last week. My mother gave me that small smile she used when she was trying to make my resistance seem petty. "Well, yes, but that was last week." I laughed, but it wasn't really funny. "Mom, I can help sometimes. I can't be everybody's backup plan forever." She slid the baking dish into the oven and shut the door a little too hard. Family should never feel like a burden. That sentence stayed with me. Not because it was wise, because it was a warning, disguised as wisdom. I told myself she meant well. I always told myself that, even when I was the one paying the property taxes on her house because she said paperwork made her anxious. Even when I was the one who set up the household account so the gardener, the housekeeper, and the insurance could all be paid without my mother having to worry. Even when I was the one who covered Lorna's son's school trip, after Lorna forgot the deadline and cried over the phone, I told myself this is what love looks like when you have enough to share. But love and access are not the same thing. And I learned that the hard way. The actual betrayal began on a Thursday afternoon at exactly 3:47 p.m. I remember the time because I was sitting in my office, halfway through a late lunch, when my phone lit up with my mother's name. She rarely called twice in a row unless she wanted immediate attention. That day, she called 3 times. I answered on the 4th ring. "Mom, is everything okay?" Her voice came sharp and breathy. "I need you to come over, right now." My stomach tightened. "Why, are you hurt?" "No, I just need you here. Don't start with questions, Kylie, just come." That was my mother's way. Urgency first, explanation later. I was at her house within 25 minutes. The hydrangeas had gone a little brown around the edges from the heat, and Lorna's silver SUV was parked crooked in the drive. That should have been my first clue. The second clue was the fact that the front door was already open. When I stepped into the foyer, I smelled strong coffee and perfume. Voices were coming from the formal sitting room. Not casual voices, formal ones, performance voices. I walked in and found my mother sitting upright on the cream sofa, wearing lipstick in the middle of the afternoon. Lorna was beside her, scrolling through her phone, and in the armchair across from them sat Mr. Hollis, the family accountant my mother liked because he always spoke slowly and never contradicted her directly. The moment I saw him, something in me went still. "What is this?" I asked. My mother patted the space beside her. "Sit down, sweetheart." I didn't sit. Mr. Hollis cleared his throat and opened a leather folder. "We're just looking at a short-term restructuring option regarding the house and a few family obligations." I looked at him, then at my mother. "Family obligations?" Lorna finally glanced up. "Oh, don't make that face. It's not a big deal." Any time Lorna said something wasn't a big deal, it meant she wanted me to carry it. Mr. Hollis slid a set of papers across the coffee table. "There's an opportunity to open a line of credit against the property with your guarantee attached. Very temporary. It would help consolidate some immediate debts and smooth cash flow." I didn't touch the papers. "What debts?" I asked. My mother answered too quickly. "Nothing dramatic. Just some things Lorna and Trevor are dealing with and a few repairs here." I turned to my sister. "Repairs?" She rolled her eyes. "The roof, Kylie, and Trevor had a delay with the restaurant permit, and we're just juggling until things settle." I looked back at my mother. "You called me over here without explanation to ask me to guarantee debt for Lorna and Trevor." My mother stiffened. "I asked you to come because this is family business." "No," I said quietly. "This is financial business, and you're trying to make it emotional." The room went silent. Mr. Hollis shifted in his chair. "No one is pressuring you. We're simply presenting an option." But that was not true. The pressure was the point. I picked up the first page and scanned it. My name appeared 3 times. There was language about collateral and guarantor liability, and accelerated recovery clauses that no one had bothered to explain over the phone. I felt my hands go cold. "This isn't temporary," I said. "If they default, I'm exposed." Lorna let out a dramatic sigh. "You act like we're trying to rob you." I turned to her. "Then why didn't you tell me the truth before I came here?" She stood up so abruptly her bracelet clattered against the side table. "Because if Mom had told you, you would have said no before listening." My mother's voice dropped into that low, disappointed tone she used when she wanted to make me feel 12 years old again. "You have so much, Kylie. Sometimes I think abundance has made you suspicious." I stared at her. Abundance did not make me suspicious. Repeated rescue made me careful. Her mouth tightened. I laid the papers back on the table and took a breath. I'm not signing anything today. My mother's expression changed right then. It was subtle, but I saw it. The softness left her face like a curtain being pulled away. All at once, there was no motherly concern in her eyes. Only offense. You came all the way over here just to humiliate us. Lorna snapped. I came because Mom made it sound urgent. It is urgent, my mother said. Unless you'd like your family to lose this house while you stand on principle. That sentence hit me like ice water. Lose the house, Mom. I've been paying the taxes and maintenance on this house for 2 years. What are you talking about? Lorna crossed her arms. And you never let us forget it. I laughed then, but it came out hollow. I never mention it. That's the problem. Mister? Hollis tried again. Perhaps everyone should take a beat. But my mother was already in motion. She stood up slowly, smoothing the front of her blouse. Do you know what I hear every time you talk like this? She asked. I hear a daughter who thinks money makes her better than the rest of us. That took my breath away. No, you hear a daughter who's tired of being cornered. Oh, please, Lorna said. Nobody cornered you. You invited an accountant to your mother's house and ambushed me with legal papers. My mother pointed toward the dining room. Fine, then don't sign today. Stay for dinner at least and stop making everything ugly. That was how she did it. Abruptly shift the scene. Pretend the knife had not just been laid on the table. I should have left then. But I stayed. Maybe because part of me still believed dinner could fix what daylight had exposed. Maybe because daughters are trained from childhood to think that if we're patient enough, kind enough, calm enough, love will remember itself. Dinner began at 6:15. My mother lit candles as if we were celebrating something. Lorna opened a bottle of white wine. Trevor arrived late and acted as if he knew nothing, which only made it more obvious that he knew everything. 2 of my mother's church friends came by to drop off a casserole and somehow ended up staying. There I was, sitting at that long polished table under the brass chandelier, trying to swallow green beans while my chest felt tight as wire. For the first 20 minutes, everyone performed normalcy. Then Trevor made the mistake of saying, once we get the financing squared away, things will really turn around. I looked at him. Interesting choice of words. Lorna set down her fork. Can you not do this here? I almost laughed. You brought this here. My mother put her napkin on the table with exaggerated patience. Kylie, enough. No, I said. My voice stayed calm, but I could feel it shaking underneath. I want to know how long this was being planned before I walked in. Lorna muttered, here we go. I ignored her. Was it a week, a month? My mother's church friend looked down at her plate. Trevor reached for his water. No one met my eyes. That was answer enough. I stood up. My mother looked at me in disbelief. Sit down. I'm leaving. Lorna laughed, cold and sharp. Of course you are. That's what you do when someone tells you no. I turned to her fully. No, Lorna. What I do is show up. What I do is help. What I do is absorb and excuse and smooth over. But I am not going to sit here and pretend this isn't manipulation. My mother rose so fast her chair legs scraped the floor. Manipulation, she said. After all I have done for you. I felt my heart sink. There it was, the old invoice. Motherhood spoken of as leverage. What exactly are you saying you did for me? I asked quietly. That I am supposed to repay with access to my finances. The room went dead still. My mother's face turned hard in a way I had never seen, at least not turned fully toward me. If you think this family is beneath you now, she said, each word clipped and clear, then maybe you should go. I swallowed. I think this family is asking me to fund what no one else will face. Lorna stood beside her, triumphant already. Then leave. I picked up my purse from the chair. My hands were trembling so badly I nearly dropped my keys. That was when my mother said the words that changed everything. If you walk out that door tonight, Kylie, don't come back. I looked at her, waiting for the crack in her expression. The mother part, the part that would soften and say, I didn't mean that. But it never came. Instead, she lifted her chin. Don't come back. So I walked. I don't remember much about the drive home except the sound of my own breathing. My chest hurt. My fingers kept slipping on the steering wheel. I sat in my garage for nearly 20 minutes before I could force myself to go inside. The house was quiet, too quiet. I took off my shoes, set down my purse, and just stood in the kitchen staring at the marble counter while the refrigerator hummed. Then my phone buzzed, one text, then another, then 3 more. The first was from Lana. Maybe now Mom can stop pretending you care. The second was from the household account alert system. 4 transactions pending, 2 furniture charges, 1 luxury appliance order, 1 contractor deposit, all authorized within the hour. I felt the blood drain from my face. I logged in with shaking hands. The household account, an account I funded every month for my mother's home expenses, had been hit for nearly $30,000 since I walked out. Then came a message from the gate service app. Your access code has been removed. Not suspended, removed. That was the moment I knew it was not a family argument. It was not a misunderstanding that would settle overnight. It was not one harsh sentence spoken in anger. It was a line in the sand, and my own mother had drawn it. I did not sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table in a robe, with the lights dimmed and a cup of tea going cold beside me, scrolling through transaction notices and old account authorizations until dawn softened, windows gray. I wanted so badly to believe there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe the charges had been scheduled earlier. Maybe the gate code update was automatic. Maybe my mother would call in the morning and say, "We were all upset. Let's talk." She did call in the morning. At 8:12, I answered on the first ring. Mom, her voice was cool, not angry, not tearful. Cool was worse. "Have you decided whether you're going to make this right?" I stared at the phone. Make what right? She exhaled through her nose, the way she always did when she wanted to suggest I was being difficult on purpose. "Your behavior last night, my behavior, you embarrassed me in my own home." I actually looked around the empty kitchen as if someone else should be hearing this too. "You ambushed me with legal documents and then told me not to come back. You were disrespectful." I said no. "There's a difference." "Yes," I said. There is a silence. Then she said, "Well, if this is the game you want to play, don't expect me to protect your reputation when people ask what happened." That sentence landed quietly, but it carried a threat inside it. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means," she replied, "I'm done covering for your selfishness." Then she hung up. I sat there with the phone still in my hand, hearing the deadline hum. By noon, 2 cousins had texted me asking if everything was okay with my mother, because they'd heard there was a scene. By 3, one of my mother's church friends sent a message that sounded sympathetic on the surface, but was pure fishing underneath. "Your poor mama is heartbroken. Families go through storms, but pride can make things worse." Pride. That word follows women around whenever they stop absorbing mistreatment. Still, I tried to make peace. That's the part I need to say out loud, because women like the audience listening to this know exactly how we second guess ourselves. I did not go straight to war. I did not slam doors and hire lawyers at sunrise. I tried repeatedly to bring the temperature down. That afternoon, I sent flowers to my mother's house. White lilies and pale pink roses, the kind she liked for church. I attached a note that said, "I love you. I'm willing to talk when we can both do it honestly." The flowers were refused at the door. The next day I called again. No answer. I left a voicemail. "Mom, I'm not your enemy, but I am not going to sign papers I haven't agreed to. If you want to talk about what's happening, I'm here." No reply. On Saturday morning, I drove halfway down her street before remembering the gate code had been removed. I parked under a jacaranda tree where the purple blossoms had started dropping on the curb and just sat there. I could see part of the front porch from where I was. The swing moved slightly in the wind. A landscaper's truck was in the drive. Then I saw Lana walk out with an iced coffee and a shopping bag, laughing into her phone as if nothing at all had happened. I don't know why that hurt as much as it did. Maybe because betrayal is one thing, casual betrayal is another. I was still sitting there when a soft knock came on my passenger window. It startled me so badly I nearly dropped my phone. It was Rosa, my mother's housekeeper. She had worked in that house for 9 years. She was small and neat and kind, always wearing little gold hoops and sensible shoes. I opened the door and stepped out. "Kylie," she said quietly, "you shouldn't be here." I tried to smile. "I'm not causing trouble. I just wanted to see if my mom might talk to me." Rosa looked down the street before speaking. "Your sister told everyone you cut your mother off. She said you threatened the house." I felt something twist in my chest. "That is not true. I know," Rosa said softly. "I know." Her eyes filled before mine did. That's how I knew it was bad. "Is my mother saying that too?" I asked. Rosa hesitated just long enough to answer without words. Then she reached into the pocket of her apron and handed me an envelope. "This was on the kitchen desk. It had your name on it. I thought maybe you should have it before someone else opened it." Inside were 3 receipts. A chandelier installation, custom patio furniture, a designer range for the outdoor kitchen, all billed to the household account, all dated after my mother told me not to come back. I looked up at Rosa. Why would she do this now? Rosa's face tightened with sad understanding. "Because she thinks you will pay rather than fight." There it was, the sentence I had not yet been brave enough to say to myself. I thanked her and drove away shaking. That evening, I called my bank and asked for a full record of account activity from the previous 6 months. Then I called my assistant and told her to pause all automatic replenishments to the household account until I reviewed them personally. Within 20 minutes, Lorna called, not to ask how I was, not to explain, not to say maybe everyone had gone too far. She called furious. "How dare you freeze that account?" She snapped the moment I answered. I paused automatic deposits. I said, "I did not freeze anything. You know Mom uses that for household expenses. I also know somebody bought patio furniture and an outdoor range 48 hours after I was told not to come back." "Oh my word," she said with a mocking laugh. "You are unbelievable. Mom wanted to make the backyard nice for the charity lunch next month. With my money." "With family money," she corrected. "No," I said very calmly, "not family money." "My money." That made her go silent. Then she hissed, "This is exactly why Mom says you've changed." I almost asked, change from what? From a daughter into a person, but I was too tired. "Lorna," I said, "tell me the truth. Was that loan paperwork your idea or Mom's?" She waited a beat too long. I don't have to listen to this. Then she hung up. 3 days later, things got worse. A mutual friend called, and in that careful way people do when they want gossip, but don't want to sound hungry for it, said, "I heard your mom is devastated. She said you abandoned her over a misunderstanding about money." Abandoned, that word sat on me like wet wool. I had not abandoned anyone. I had answered every call for years. I had rearranged my life around needs that were not mine, but the family story had already been rewritten, and in that version I was not the steady daughter. I was the cold one, the rich one, the selfish one, and still. I tried one more time. I sent an email to my mother, Lorna, and Mr. Hollies. I want a calm meeting with full transparency, no surprises, no pressure. If there are legitimate financial concerns regarding the house, I am willing to review them with independent counsel present. I also want a complete list of recent expenses charged to the household account. Mr. Hollies replied first. I think that would be wise. My mother never replied. Lorna sent only one line. "You don't get to bring lawyers into family matters." That message told me more than she realized, because honest people are rarely frightened by documentation. But that wasn't the end of it. What happened next shocked even me. 4 days after that email, I got a call from the bank's senior account manager, a woman named Denise, who had handled some of my personal and business accounts for years. Her voice was measured, professional, but there was a note in it I had learned to recognize. Concern. "Kylie," she said, "there are a few items I'd like to review with you directly. Do you have a moment?" I sat down immediately. Yes, there have been attempts to increase the access permissions on the household account, and associated property service payments. I frowned. By who? I can discuss the request origin in person, she said. Would you be available this afternoon? The drive to the bank felt longer than it was. Denise met me in a private office with glass walls and soft grey chairs. She brought coffee I didn't touch. Then she turned her screen toward me. There were formal requests submitted through the account portal asking to add Lona as a full administrative user and to authorize a property-backed payment structure tied to a renovation credit facility. I stared at the screen. I did not approve any of this. Denise nodded. That's why I asked you to come in. Your digital signature appears to have been attached to preliminary paperwork, but the authentication trail is inconsistent. My skin prickled. Inconsistent how? She opened another file. The signature stamp matches documents on file, but the login location doesn't align with your verified activity. It appears to have originated from a home network associated with your mother's residence. I don't think I breathed for a full 5 seconds. You're saying someone used my stored signature? I'm saying the submission raises concerns. That is bank language, careful, polished, but the meaning was clear enough. I heard myself ask, is this criminal? Denise folded her hands. I think it is serious. There are moments when pain changes temperature. It stops being hot and becomes cold, so cold it sharpens you. Until then, I had still been dealing in hurt, in disbelief, in family logic, but sitting in that grey office, looking at a version of my own name used where I had not placed it, something in me hardened into clarity. This was not a fight, it was an attempt to secure my guarantee, an attempt to convert my support into legal obligation, an attempt, possibly, to do it without my knowledge. I left the bank with printed records in a sealed envelope and drove straight to the office of an attorney named Naomi Reed. A friend had recommended her months earlier for an unrelated matter, and I had saved the number thinking I'd probably never need it. Women say that a lot before they need one. Naomi's office overlooked a row of sycamore trees, and her waiting room smelled like paper, lemon polish, and strong coffee. She was in her 50s, silver at the temples, elegant without trying, and when she shook my hand her grip was steady. I liked her immediately. She listened without interrupting while I told her everything from the dinner to the gate code to the account requests. Every now and then she'd jot something down with a fountain pen. She did not widen her eyes. She did not say, I can't believe it. Women who have done this work long enough know better. Family betrayal no longer surprises them. Only the specifics do. When I finished, she asked one question. Who legally owns you? Mother's house. I blinked. What do you mean? I mean exactly that. Whose name is on the deed. I sat back. Mine. Naomi nodded slowly, alone. Yes, I bought it through an LLC and held title personally after refinancing. My mother lives there, but the deed is mine. Does she know that? I hesitated. She knows I bought it. We never discussed the deed in blunt terms because she didn't like blunt terms. Naomi gave me a look that was not unkind. And does your sister know? No, that changed the room. Naomi uncapped her pen again. Kylie, I need you to hear me very clearly. If you own the property, and someone is attempting to leverage it, or use your stored signature to secure related debt, this is not family confusion. This is exposure, potential fraud. At minimum, abuse of authority and misrepresentation. I stared at the framed landscape behind her desk while my heart thudded. She went on. I also want every agreement connected to that house. Occupancy arrangement, maintenance authorizations, household staffing, utility payments, trust documentation if applicable, everything. There is a family support trust. I said slowly. I set it up after my father died, mostly for educational help, medical emergencies, and upkeep on certain family obligations. Who administers it? My mother and Mr. Holly's had limited coordination access for expense submission. Naomi leaned back. Then that trust needs immediate review. I remember gripping the arms of the chair. I feel sick. That's because your instincts are catching up to reality, she said. It's unpleasant, but useful. Over the next week, reality kept arriving. Every day brought something new. A vendor invoice I had never seen. A landscaping contract extended at double its usual cost. A jewelry store charge that was coded under event wardrobe. A catering deposit for a charity luncheon that had apparently become far more elaborate once everyone assumed I'd continue paying for it without asking questions, and then came the discovery that stopped me cold. My assistant forwarded a document from an old shared digital folder connected to the house office. It had been misfiled under appliance warranties. If she had not been meticulous, I might never have seen it. It was a draft proposal. At the top, property transition concept; below that, occupancy restructure following guarantor approval. And below that, in plain black text, language describing a long-term plan to convert the property into a multifamily legacy asset, with primary residential use designated for my mother and future family use consideration for Lana and Trevor, future family use consideration. I read it twice before the meaning settled in. This had never been about a short-term emergency. This had been a plan. Not just to get my signature, to turn my support into surrender, to pull my property into a structure where everyone could live off what I had secured while still framing me as selfish if I objected. I sat at my desk and whispered out loud, "How could I have been so blind?" But the answer came quickly, because I was raised to see need before motive. That's how some daughters get trapped for years. Still, one part of me wanted one more piece of certainty, not for the lawyer, for my own soul. I needed to know whether my mother had been swept up in Lana's desperation, or whether she had been leading it. That answer came from the cruelest place of all, a voice note. Rosa sent it to me by accident, I think. She had meant to forward me a grocery list screen. What my mother was asking about. Instead, a 32-second audio clip arrived. I pressed play. It was Lana's voice first. "If she stops the account, we push harder. She always folds." Then my mother, unmistakable, low and tired but clear as glass. "Kylie doesn't need kindness, she needs consequence. Once she realizes she can't bear being shut out, she'll sign whatever is put in front of her." I played it again because I didn't want to believe it. Once she realizes she can't bear being shut out. That was their strategy, not explanation, not honesty, emotional starvation. That was the moment hurt became anger, clean anger, not screaming anger, not revenge, just truth with a backbone. I stood up, walked to the mirror in my dressing room, and looked at my own face, tired, pale, older than I had looked 10 days earlier. And I said, this wasn't a mistake. It was a plan, and once I said it, everything changed. The next morning I began preparing, not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. There is a kind of power older women understand better than younger ones sometimes do. It's the power of not announcing your next move. The power of stillness while the other person mistakes your silence for surrender. That is where I lived for the next 3 weeks. Naomi assembled a team. A forensic accountant named Ben Carver reviewed the trust and household expense records. Denise at the bank flagged every authorization connected to my signature. My assistant collected archived emails, scanned invoices, message threads, and vendor correspondence. We built a timeline, and once you put betrayal in chronological order, it loses a lot of its disguise. The pattern was unmistakable. First, increased discretionary spending masked as home maintenance. Then efforts to normalize Lana's presence at the house. Extended stays, contractor meetings. A furnished guest wing for family support. Then the credit proposal, then the pressure campaign, then the attempt to change access permissions when I refused. Every piece fit. Ben came to my office on a Wednesday with 2 folders and a face that told me he hated what he was about to say. "There's more," he said. "There usually is." He opened the first folder. "The Family Support Trust has been used for expenses that don't meet the conditions you described." He slid over a printed list. Spa membership reimbursements. Designer purchases logged as event wardrobe. Restaurant consulting fee for Trevor's failed business categorized as community development planning. Even hotel charges from a weekend Lana had taken with friends, billed under grief recovery. I stared at the page. This is theft. Ben adjusted his glasses. It is misappropriation at minimum. Then he opened the second folder. This one concerns the property itself. There were emails between Mr. Hollies and a lending coordinator, notes about sensitivity around owner communication, language suggesting they hoped to secure preliminary structuring before principal resistance escalated. And then, buried in Jane, a sentence that made me put the papers down. Mother believes daughter will comply once social pressure is applied. Mother believes daughter will comply, not Lorna believes, not Trevor, mother. I got up and walked to the window because suddenly the room felt too small. Ben gave me a minute. Then he said gently, "You don't have to decide everything today." But I did decide something that day. I decided I would never again confuse my willingness to help with an obligation to be used. Naomi's legal advice was clear. First, revoke every non-essential authorization immediately. Second, issue formal notice that no one had authority to execute documents in my name. Third, separate all support that had been informal, because informal is where manipulators thrive. Fourth, address property. That last part was the hardest, because the house was never just a house to me. It was where my mother taught me to make pie crust by touch instead of measuring cups. It was where my father sat in the den with the newspaper folded open, while football played softly in the background. It was where Christmas stockings once hung in an uneven line because we never could find matching hooks. I had bought that house quietly, years earlier, when my mother panicked about losing it after a refinancing mess she didn't fully understand. I told her not to worry. I handled it. I let her keep living there because I genuinely wanted her to feel secure. Now that kindness had been rewritten as weakness, Naomi called it what it was. Your mother has occupancy because you permitted it, not because she owns you. That sentence lodged somewhere deep, so we drafted the first notices. Nothing dramatic, nothing theatrical, a revocation of signature authority, a termination of all pending property, backed credit inquiries, a request for full accounting from the trust, a notice that all household charges moving forward required direct review, and a meeting request. Formal this time. If my mother wanted to treat love like a contract, then we were going to let contracts speak. But life, as it does, gave me one more personal blow before the legal part fully began. It happened on a Saturday morning at 9:06. I was making coffee when my daughter Stormy padded into the kitchen holding my phone. Grandma called. She said. My chest tightened. Which grandma? Your mom. I took the phone too quickly. Did you answer? Stormy nodded, uncertain. She said to tell you families shouldn't be thrown away. I closed my eyes. Children should never be used as messengers in adult pain. Never. I don't care how hurt someone feels. I don't care how angry. There are lines decent people do not cross. What exactly did she say, sweetheart? I asked as gently as I could. Stormy frowned, trying to remember. She said she misses the old you. And she asked if we were coming home soon. Coming home, as if my mother's house was still the center of my moral obligation. I hugged my daughter, smelled strawberry shampoo in her hair, and felt something settle inside me. Not rage, resolve. That was the last straw. Not the money, not even the lie. The reach into the next generation. After I put Stormy in the den with her coloring books, I called Naomi. We're done negotiating emotionally. I said, I want this move to formal action. Her voice stayed steady. I understand. By then, my mother and Lorna still thought they were ahead. That's the part that almost makes me sad now. They mistook my quiet for confusion. They thought because I wasn't screaming, I wasn't moving. Meanwhile, I was changing passwords, locking digital archives, notifying vendors, shifting account structures, and documenting every contact. Ben was preparing a clean ledger showing exactly what had been spent, where, by whom, and under what fault categories. Denise had already flagged the suspect signatures for review. Mr. Holly's, faced with documentation, had become suddenly difficult to reach, which told me more than any confession could have. And while my mother was hosting lunches and telling people I'd turned cold, I was doing something far more dangerous to a dishonest person. I was getting organized. Little did they know, I was already 3 steps ahead. The family meeting was set for a Tuesday at 2:00 p.m. in a private conference room at Naomi's office. My mother requested the location change herself, which was almost funny. She told Lorna she didn't want a scene at the house. What she really wanted, I think, was neutral ground where she could still perform dignity while leaning on guilt. She probably pictured me arriving alone, emotional, eager to smooth things over. She probably assumed she could sigh, dab at the corners of her eyes, say the word family enough times, and pushed me back into the role I'd always played. She had no idea what was waiting. The night before the meeting, Lorna sent me a text at 11:18 p.m. "If you come in hostile tomorrow, Mom will never recover from it." I read that sentence 3 times and felt almost nothing. That was new. The old me would have heard threat, plea, accusation, and responsibility all at once. The new me heard strategy. I typed back only one line. "Tomorrow is about facts." She did not reply. The next morning I woke before my alarm. It was still dark outside. For a moment I lay in bed listening to the quiet house and the distant hum of traffic, and I let myself grieve, not the money, not the legal mess, the idea of my mother, the version of her I had protected in my heart long after the truth started leaking through. It is a painful thing to realize that someone can love you and still feel entitled to use you. People don't talk about that enough. By 8:00 a.m. I was dressed in cream slacks, a soft grey blouse, and the pearl earrings my father once gave me for my 21st birthday. Not armor exactly, but close. I drank half a cup of coffee, answered 2 harmless emails, kissed my daughter goodbye, and left the house with a strange calm sitting low in my body. At 11:30 Naomi called. "There's one more development," she said. "Trevor has been making inquiries about listing the guest cottage for short-term rental." I stopped walking in the middle of my dressing room. The guest cottage. Yes, on the property. I stared at the wall. He doesn't own that. He doesn't own anything there. I know, but there are draft photos and description notes in the property file. It appears they intended to create independent income streams without your authorization. I actually laughed, but there was no humor in it. So while accusing me of abandoning the family, they were monetizing my property. That appears to be the direction. That should have shocked me. Instead, it clarified things even further. There is a point in every betrayal story where the pain becomes almost efficient. The lies stack so high that doubt can no longer survive under them. The meeting was in 2 hours. At 12:40, Denise called to confirm the temporary restrictions were in place on all disputed account pathways. At 1:05, Ben sent the finalized expenditure summary. At 1:17, Naomi forwarded the occupancy agreement my mother had signed years earlier, but likely never expected to be referenced again. It was simple, generous, and devastating in its clarity. The house remained solely owned by me. My mother had the right to reside there so long as the property was not encumbered, subleased, restructured, or used for debt without owner consent. In other words, she had broken the agreement the moment she helped pursue that loan structure. At 1:30, while I was in the car outside Naomi's office, my phone rang one last time. My mother. I considered not answering. Then I did. Her voice was softer than it had been in weeks. "Kylie, yes. I don't want outsiders making this uglier than it needs to be." I looked through the windshield at the parking meter and said nothing. She went on. "You know how families are. People get emotional. Sometimes pride gets involved. Pride again. Interesting how often the person causing the wound accuses the bleeding one of vanity. You told me not to come back. I said, a pause, I was upset. You removed my gate access that same night. Another pause. Lana handled that. There was confusion. There was not confusion. I said. There was intention. Her voice sharpened. So this is how you're going to talk to me now. After everything, there it was again, the old invoice. Motherhood is permanent debt. I took one breath. I'm going upstairs now. If you have something honest to say it in the room. Then I ended the call. The conference room was cool and bright, all glass water pitchers and legal pads, and that faint smell of toner. Offices never quite lose. Naomi was already there with 2 junior staff members. Ben sat at the far end with his folders arranged in quiet order. They all looked up when I came in, and Naomi gave me one small nod that somehow steadied the entire afternoon. At 1:58, the door opened. My mother entered first, in a navy dress and gold brooch, carrying herself like a woman arriving for a board meeting she expected to control. Lana followed in white trousers and oversized sunglasses she took off once she sat down. Trevor came last, trying to look detached. Mr. Hollies did not come, which told me exactly how much he wanted no part of recorded proceedings. My mother gave the room one quick sweep with her eyes and then landed on me. "I didn't realize you were bringing an audience," she said. Naomi answered before I could. "These are appropriate professionals." My mother smiled tightly. Of course. We sat. For the first few minutes, it was almost absurdly polite. Water was poured. Names were confirmed. Naomi outlined the purpose of the meeting: review of disputed authorizations, trust expenditures, and property misuse concerns. My mother looked offended by the language, which was ironic considering how much she had benefited from vague language for years. Then Lorna started. "This whole thing is ridiculous," she said. "Mom is under stress, and Kylie is turning family pain into paperwork." Ben looked down at his notes. Naomi folded her hands. "I spoke directly to my mother. Did you or did you not support efforts to secure debt against the property using my guarantee?" My mother inhaled as if insulted. "I supported finding a solution. That is not an answer." She looked at me with open disbelief, as if she couldn't quite accept I was refusing the old dance. "I did what mothers do," she said. "I tried to hold this family together." "No," I replied calmly. "You tried to control the terms under which I was allowed to belong to it." Trevor muttered, "This is getting dramatic." Naomi slid a document across the table. "Then let's reduce the drama and review specifics." Everything was about to change, and they had no idea it was coming. What followed was not loud, that's important to say. Justice does not always arrive with shouting. Sometimes it arrives in stapled packets and measured voices. Sometimes it looks like a woman finally refusing to be narrated by the people who harmed her. Naomi began with the financial summary: unauthorized trust expenditures, improper category coding, attempts to expand access privileges, lending inquiries tied to my digital signature without valid authorization, vendor work initiated under false assumptions of payment continuity. As she spoke, I watched my mother's face. At first, she wore annoyance, then indignation, then something smaller and colder: calculation. Lorna interrupted twice. "That's not what happened," she said once. "You're twisting this," she said another time. Ben answered each objection by sliding over documentation, dates, invoices, email threads, account logs. Trevor stopped talking altogether. Then Naomi turned to the property. She placed the occupancy agreement in front of my mother. "Mrs. Jenner," she said, "this document governs your residential use of the property. Section 4 prohibits any debt, sublease, restructuring, or third-party commercial use absent written owner consent." My mother stared down at the paper as if it were written in another language. "You knew very well she would never enforce that," Lorna said. Naomi didn't even look at her. "Enforcement is not contingent on your expectation." That was the first time I almost smiled. My mother lifted her head slowly. "You brought me here to threaten me." I answered before anyone else could. "No, Mom. I brought you here because for years I handled things quietly. I paid, I fixed, I absorbed, and you came to believe that silence meant permission." Her eyes flashed. "You are my daughter." "Yes," I said, "and you treated me like a line of credit." The room went still. Lorna slapped her palm on the table. "How dare you speak to her that way?" I turned to my sister, and for the first time in weeks my voice gained a little edge. "How dare you let her?" That one landed. Lorna blinked. Trevor shifted. My mother's mouth parted, then closed. Naomi continued. "Effective immediately, all disputed financial pathways remain restricted pending full audit. Any further attempt to represent owner authority will be referred for formal review." In addition, she slid over another document. "A 30-day notice of termination of occupancy is being issued due to material breach." My mother went white. I will never forget that moment. Not because it pleased me, it didn't. It made me deeply sad. But it was the first moment the structure of our family reversed just enough for truth to enter the room. She looked at me stunned. "You would evict your own mother?" My throat tightened. There it was. The sentence designed to condemn me before anyone could ask what led there. I kept my voice even. I would end access that was abused. Lorna stood up so fast her chair rolled backward. "This is evil." "No," I said. "Evil is using love as leverage." Trevor finally spoke. "Now wait a second. There has to be another path." Naomi answered him. There was. It involved honesty weeks ago. My mother's hands were trembling now. She looked smaller somehow, not in body but in certainty. Where am I supposed to go? And there, right there, was the part that nearly broke me, because no matter what she had done, that was still my mother asking a frightened question in an aging voice. I could have caved then, the old me would have. Instead I said quietly, "You had a place, you turned it into a weapon." Tears filled her eyes. Real ones, I think. Not all grief is fake just because it's late. I was trying to make sure this family stayed secure. You were trying to make sure control stayed with you, I replied. Lana began crying too, though with her it always arrived tangled with anger. You're punishing all of us because you're offended. I looked at her steadily. No, Lana, I'm stopping a pattern because I finally understand it. Then Naomi delivered the rest. The guest cottage was not to be occupied or marketed by anyone without written consent. All household staff contracts would be transitioned out of the disputed account and handled individually. The trust would be suspended for internal family disbursement, pending review, and restructured under independent administration.